kafir, idol worship, Jew hatred. Kafir means Hindu hatred, idol worship, Hindu hatred, and the Jew hatred, this Jewish, not only phobia, but hatred. This is something which is a more ingrained in the Muslims of India. When I say India, means Indian subcontinent, including Pakistan and Bangladesh, than anywhere else.
Namaste everyone, most welcome to Sangam Talks. Khalid Omarji calls himself a secular humanist. He's a barrister and a social media influencer, born in the Pakistani part of the Indian subcontinent, and now he's permanently settled in England. He has multifarious interests, including philosophy, social sciences, psychology, neuroscience, I'd like to know about this, law, and human rights. So today he'll be talking about the stories we tell ourselves. This started with when he wrote a piece about a man who wanted to be the prophet. And then the idea started developing, and how religious stories impact the communities and our minds.
It's nice to talk about the stories because since our childhood, we are all hooked on stories. The moment we start hearing, or even before we start understanding the words, our mothers start telling us stories in the form of different lullabies and songs and music and all that stuff. So stories are the things which create meaning in our lives. I would say that even history of humanity is a story. Stories, basically the stories which we hear in our childhood, they change our brains and they make us what we are. And then they are like stories make the human history. So if you look at it, it's not about the school or the curriculum. It's all about religious books. All are about tales. Basically, they're all stories. Like Bible is a story of thousands of years of humanity. It starts from the creation and goes on to then Adam and flood and Noah and so on and so forth, and Abraham and Moses, and goes on to Jesus and after that. So it's a tale of thousands of years. Similarly, in Hinduism, Mahabharata is an epic. So for thousands of years, humanity has extracted lessons from Mahabharata, which has shaped I would say, the ethos of Hinduism. So stories are there in the scripture, the Muslim scripture as well, which profoundly affect the followers of the faith. So what I wanted to discuss today is that the lessons which especially the Muslims of India, they extract from those stories, they profoundly affect the peace and prosperity of India. So it's very important for us to learn and understand that how stories are so important in our life, because stories help us to understand our place in the world. By stories, we connect with each other. The human connection, if you look at it, is all through the stories. We might not have heard about our grandparents and great-grandparents, but we hear it from our mothers and about their generations. So this is all a connectivity of thought, human thought. And stories are the ones we experience rich emotions, feelings of joy, sorrow, hardships, failures. Everything is a story. We go to watch a movie or a drama or a stage show. This is all tells a story, and how much it affects our knowledge and our relations and the meaning which we make. The recent recently, the Kashmir files, how much it is a story, how much it has changed our understanding. Now, this Kerala files is on, so much more to come. So stories, I would say, are very, very important. They are the ones who shape our brains, and it brings strangers together. We become friends with the people whom we share our life stories. You cannot be a friend to somebody until and unless you are not sharing your stories with them, your life stories. It makes us empathetic. It makes us generous. It makes us love each other, and also it makes us kill each other. This is all based upon the stories. So it's so important for us to understand that how much effect these have. They can bring us to tears. They can change our attitudes, our opinions, our behaviors. We are seeing the change in behaviors after those Hindu girls who are about to or deciding to marry a Muslim. They are changing their attitudes and behaviors because it's all on a story of 3 hours seen on a celluloid, changing their whole way of thinking, because the stories change our brains, and often they change it for the better. And this is how we create connections and we experience all our emotions. So as I say, it's not only about that God or the prophets or the holy men that they tell stories. Humans have written stories. They have affected generations and generations of people. I would say the Odyssey by Homer in 8th century BC is a story which has affected so much of literature till today. We have been talking so much about Frankenstein, the story written in 1818. Is a story of the modern world. In 1818, when it was written, if you look at today, this novel, how much it affects and impacts the literature and our culture. So that one novel has not only affected scientists, but as well as writers. And it tells us that how a modern, fear of creations, which we create, and then they are going to go out of our control. So similarly, it comes to my mind in 1984. So 1984 is a story, we so much talk about the George Orwell wrote it. I mean, he wrote it in 1949, and he wrote a story about the future of the humanity. If you read it today, it looks like that as if the future is being foretold by him, that the themes of totalitarianism and technology and surveillance, etc., they are all in which are today in our lives. We cannot escape surveillance because of the handheld computer, I mean, the mobile phone. So this is how I would say the stories are either written by the humans or told by the gods. They do affect the whole, humanity. Today, if we look at around ourselves, all the conflict as well as the peace and love and harmony is all because of the stories. All because of the stories. If you if you look at Mahabharata, it's a story about the development of Hinduism from 400 BC till between 400 BC and 200, and it's the textbook of dharma as well as it's a history, itihasa, I would say. So it's a story about the development of Hinduism. And when it, not only that it teaches lessons, it also tells something else. For example, it tells us that the religious thought is a progression. It is an evolution of thought. Those religions which Hinduism faces as a loggerheads today in India, that scripture tells fixation. It's nothing to, there is no evolution about it. It tells you that, well, whatever has been told is told and it is fixed forever. So you see this story about Mahabharata is a story which has evolved over centuries. So it gives a different plasticity of mind to the person who is hearing those stories or who is taking guidance from that book. It tells that the scripture is not something which doesn't evolve. But when it comes to Islam scripture, it tells the believers that everything has been fixed and you cannot change it. You cannot change a word about it. So you see the difference and see how this mindset will create different persons and how we are going to take different lessons from it. So this is very, very important. Well, if you ask me, I would say what I have learned from this story of Mahabharata. There are few lessons. If I say that it teaches us that a revengeful instinct will lead to one's downfall. This is a lesson we learn. And then it tells me, stand what is for the righteousness, whatever is right, and fight for it. This is so fight is for because of the righteousness. And then it tells me that, well, half knowledge can be dangerous. It tells me don't be swayed by greed. It tells me never to give up in spite of whatever the hurdles you face. It tells me being a woman doesn't mean that you are a lesser individual. When I hear as a Muslim these stories which Islam tells me, it is something the opposite. Revenge is there, huge. You don't have to fight for the right, but whatever you have been ordered and ordained. Okay. And the eternal bond of friendship is just when you share that faith only. So because of the your belief and your faith on Allah, and there is knowledge is only it's not about half knowledge or full knowledge. Knowledge is only whatever you have been told. You don't have to apply your mind, because ironically, or for people to understand, the Quran as it is compiled, as it is, you find it starts with the words, the first surah, which is basically second, but the first in terms of it starts with the this is the book which has no doubt in it. So it's the first word of Quran as it is. When a Muslim starts reading, it says, Zalikal Kitabul La Raiba Fihi. This is the book in which there is no doubt. So the starting point is that you cannot doubt. Hinduism says seeking. You have to be a seeker. You don't have to be a believer. You just need to seek wherever the evidence leads. So you can understand that the stories are very, very, very important. And this is something that I will expound further on it. So now, I was saying that there are in the religious book of Islam, there are stories, Quran and Hadith, the sayings of the Prophet, which profoundly affect the behaviors of the followers of the faith. As I said, if you read Mahabharata, you will have a certain effect. You will extract a certain mindset from reading those stories. Similarly, if you believe in Quran and Hadith and you read it, and whatever the mullah tells you, you extract certain stories, certain results from those stories. And it is very important. What I mean, the stories which are given in Quran and Hadith, these are very important because they are effectively affecting the 1.8 billion people on earth, their minds, because they believe that the prophet was the most perfect human being who ever walked on earth, okay, and whose life is beyond any scrutiny or any doubt or criticism. And it is the life which every Muslim has to emulate, has to follow, has to copy, if he can, to whatever extent he can. So my thesis is that if the Islamic world can change their stories, if they can change the inferences, the results they draw from those stories, their destiny would change as well, their fate would change as well. Because whatever we think, that affects our actions, and that affects our future. So it's very important for us to have the right kind of stories, and they are the ones who are going to be changing the whole peace and prosperity of the world. But we are talking specifically about India because we need to understand that the Indian Islam is very, very different from the other brands of Islam which are elsewhere in other countries, like the one from which Islam originated, Saudi Arabia now. That has got a totally different kind of thinking about Islam. Just to give you one example, in Saudi Arabia, you cannot have graves. You cannot have a permanent cemented graveyard or grave. You cannot have a canopy on it. You bury, and it has to be leveled. So probably the only grave, a grave where is of the Prophet over there. There is no, and his companions who are buried with him in the same compound. Otherwise, you will not find any grave of any of the Saudi kings or the previous or anybody else. No, they are just leveled. They have no tombstone, no nothing. But now you go to India. I mean, India has got literally hundreds of thousands of mazars. The most famous one, the Ajmer Sharif, and the millions. It's a business of millions of rupees being given by the devotees over there. So you can just see that just one thing, having a mazar or not having no mazars, how much it changes the landscape of the country, and the whole so much of linked with that. They have got lands attached to that. They have got money. They have got business. They have got so much of clout, and it is the mafia, I would say, the mazar mafia. So this is something which is purely of Indian brand. So when we try to understand Islam, we need to really understand that the Islam in India totally evolved in a totally different way, and the Indian Muslims have actually evolved in a very strangely different way. So the thing is that in Saudi Arabia, nobody will be talking about the miracles performed by these saints and stuff, because there are no saints there. And if there are no saints there and there are no miracles attached to that, then even there is no miracle attached with the Prophet as well in Saudi Arabia, the pure brand of Islam over there. If there are no brands and no, then surely there is not so much of what we call illogical, illogical stuff attached with that. Because when we say, "Oh, Jesus Christ, resurrected, and then he went up the to the gods in the sky, in the heavens, and he's alive there, and then he will come back," so Jesus never died on the cross. So if this is the this is the understanding of the Christians about the Christianity, then the whole, you open a Pandora box of miracles and coming back to life, and then stories. It is all about stories. You heaven and hell is a story of the Abrahamic faiths. So how much disaster it has done to humanity, I would say, if you ask me what is the worst story ever told, I would say heaven. Heaven and hell is the worst story ever told by humans, because when you say you do good, you are going to be a better place, which is called heaven or Jannat. Then the first thing which I'm saying is, well, it means that there is something better than this world. So ye Jannat nahi hai, there is another Jannat. So we will never try to make this world a heaven for everybody. We will always be doing all the mischief and bad stuff and whatever we can do, but to have a better Jannat, to go to a heaven. And it is so illogical. It will be eternity. Well, what are you telling me? Eternity means forever. Forever. So there will be no time, there will be no passing of time. So if there will be no passing of time, you put me in any place where there is no passing of time, I will really go mad. Humans will go mad, because all our cognition, all our understanding about life is due to the change we have. I mean, if you sit before a wall and you have just plain white wall staring at that wall, you will actually go mad, because nothing is gonna change from your perspective. One story about Jannat, Dozakh, this Hur, and all this stuff, you imagine how much mischief it has created for centuries and thousands of years of having a. And now the story about in Hinduism about reincarnation, about karma, about coming back to pay for your karma which you did in your past life, and then how your soul can even go to different species as well. How much empathy it teaches you to be with even with the animals, with the inanimate creations. How much it links you with all the different nature. The tree or a bee or a fly or a cow or a dog or cat or whatever, all becomes part of me. So what morals you draw from the stories, that is something which is of fundamental importance. It is not important whether it happened or it did not happen. Nobody knew whether Abraham had a dream to sacrifice his son, and then the God, when he was going to sacrifice him, and the God sent a lamb and blah blah blah. But see the effect of the story. See the effect of that story of Abraham. They say Abraham, broke the idols because, and then what he did was कि वो जो कुल्हाड़ा था जिससे उसने वो idols को break किया. So he did not um, break all of them, but he left one, and then he handed वो कुल्हाड़ा उसके हाथ उसकी गोद में डाल दिया या उस बुत के डाल दिया. So then when people asked him कि जी वो कुल्हाड़ा किसने ये किसने वो किया है, who has destroyed these idols. So he said ask him, because he has got that hammer in his hands. So when a mullah tells these stories, people will clap or say mashallah, wow, wallah wallah, what a story. They will not understand how illogical is all this story, and what does it mean to break the idols. Idol is not some, and no Hindu believes that is a god. It is a representation of a part of God, of a power of God, of a manifestation of one of the powers of God. So our gods and goddesses are the manifestation of those qualities of God. If Saraswati hai, so it's about knowledge and books and music, and so it's just a part of the beauty of the goodness and the godliness. Nobody says कि ये जो idols हैं, they actually are gods. They, so total misunderstanding. So Muslims have a total misunderstanding about what they do is they just go into the raw words. They don't understand that the words is not the word, it is the meaning attached to that. If I just give you one example, if you say, they say Quran has said that if somebody steals something, cut his hands. Okay. Now, it doesn't mean cut his hands literally. It never happened. What the independent historian says, it is an idiom. It means that create a situation where somebody cannot create a situation in the society where somebody cannot steal. Somebody don't have to steal. So create an environment where nobody needs to be stealing. So this is what you say, cut your hand. Like we say, salab iske aage band bandhna. In Urdu we say, create a dam before this obstacle. No, we are not creating a dam. We are literally telling we are stopping it. See, so the problem is that they have taken everything in the literal, every expression in the literal sense. If I just come to for example, the Bible. Bible is a huge repository of what you call idioms and stories, which in literature. I mean, in English language, the more than Shakespeare and Bible, there are two who have added so much in terms of the richness of the language and the idioms. If I start talking about the idioms which have directly come to from Bible to English language, I was surprised. almost every other idiom which we hear and we always write is come from Bible. For example, you say in the 11th hour, at your wits' end, the blind leading the blind, by the skin of your teeth, to cast pearls before swine. See, eat, drink, and be merry. These are all from Bible. So many. Feet of clay, a fly in the ointment. They are all from Bible. I mean, there are hundreds actually. The land of milk and honey. I'm just like a lamb to the slaughterhouse. To move mountains. So many. We have all heard and use these idioms in our expressions in our school. There is nothing new under the sun. It's all from Bible. So the writing on the wall. I mean, I can talk about so many. So what the thing is that this is how the stories rich make a language rich, and they teach us lessons. Right? But the problem, what I find with the Muslims, especially of India, again, I would say this is something, unfortunately, more prevalent in the Indian Islam, because they did not have their Arabic as their first language. So they have read the translations and stuff, and the translations were always made. I think the first translation of Quran in Arabic in India, from Arabic into any of the Indian language, was made, I think, in some later part of the 17th century, 1787 or something, very, very recent. So they never learned anything. So all the Islam which they have learned came through these mazars, these people who followed all these big what you call these peas and all that, जिनके मज़ार सारे इंडिया में फैले हुए हैं. They all were related to the people, to the invaders who came here. And remember, nobody from Arabia has come to India. None of them. All your invaders were from Afghanistan. Either they were Tajiks, Mongols, and Pathans. The only man from Arabia came in the 7th century. He came to Karachi, had a fight with Raja Dahir, stayed there, and ultimately, he went back, and that's all. So all these invaders, which looted India, which actually damaged India totally, they were all Pathans, Tajiks, some combination of Turks and Mongols. The Baburs and stuff were Mongols. So what you have here is a kind of Islam which is basically a product of the Mongols and the Persians and especially the Afghans. So, and they developed into a totally different, because they had basically, they were invaders and they were looters, and they then justified everything from the stories which they made up, but they made up interpreting or misinterpreting Quran and Hadith, and created Hadith is something which was created like 350 years after that. Today, in every mullah in India will be talking about Hadith as if something, very pious and thing. And the Saudi Arabians have decided that we cannot rely on Hadith as a source of law, because it is not. they have made it a decree that hadith cannot be cited as a source of law. So you see how much difference. And in India, Sahih Bukhari is called Sahih, means the right thing, the right one. So so the stories are very much different, and that's why you could see that Islam in Malaysia is very different than the Islam in Arabia and Islam in Africa, but none is as toxic, as revengeful, as bad as it is in the Muslims of India. That is very, very sorry to say. So kafir, idol worship, Jew hatred, three things. Kafir means Hindu hatred, idol worship, Hindu hatred, and the Jew hatred. This Jewish not only phobia but hatred. This is something which is more ingrained in the Muslims of India. When I say India, means Indian subcontinent, including Pakistan and Bangladesh, than anywhere else. That is a surprising that Muslims in India have totally misunderstood what is meant by idol worship and what is meant by kafir. The Muslims of Arabia, Saudi Arabia, has no issues with that. With the mandirs or UAE has got, I think now, second mandir is being built over there, because they understand it in a totally different way, and they also understand that in their own history, there were idols, and they were pagans, and they were idol worshippers. So they still have a cultural affinity with their ancestors. But Indian Muslims, when they look back at their history, every Hindu, Muslims of India, almost every, will find a Hindu in his genealogy, will find a Sikh or Hindu, in his genealogy. Go back few years, a few hundred years. So basically, they have an inferiority complex, and they hate their own blood. Ghazwa Hind story, it is a story created from an hadith. How much animosity it is created in the subcontinent is only between the Muslims and Hindus of the subcontinent. It has got nothing to do with the Muslims in other countries. If I ask any Yemeni or Arabian or Palestinian or anyone, they would laugh it off, and they will have no, or Iranian, they will have no idea about it. But the Muslims in this sub part of the world, they had a kind of a faith on it, because this is how they serve their inferiority complex, I would say. This is tabligh thing. They have created this, and Tablighi Jamaat is something which was totally created in India. It is also nothing to do with the Islam overseas. It is a purely produced production or the creation of this land. So it is a picture. Like, for example, if you say, Muslims say Allah. No, when I say Ishwar, Bhagwan, or Krishna, a picture comes to my mind, and a story related to those names come to my mind, and the lessons comes to my mind. And I understand that even gods, when they come in the human form, they have to go through all those trials and tribulations as a human being, no matter if they are gods. But if you ask any Muslim what is Allah, he has no. The problem is, we learn the meaning of a word through the image we make. If I say elephant, you will immediately have an image of an elephant in your mind. If I say car, motor car, you will have an image of a motor car with four wheels and a steering and stuff. But if I say Allah, well, I have no image in my mind, because you see, they will say words which will have no meaning. If you ask them, Allah is a creator, okay, creator ka kya matlab hai? They will have no meaning. Allah who brings forth life and death, okay, uska kya matlab hai? They have no image. They have no say imagery or a picture attached to that word, and so it becomes meaningless. So if I say to them today, okay, listen, Allah is actually nature, or the laws of nature. Okay, and when the principles, the laws of nature, this is Allah. Now, just now, if I ask any Muslims, they say, okay, you say Bismillah, they say Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. I start with the name of Allah, who is the most gracious and merciful. Now, if I say I start with the name of Allah, well, just in my mind, I think it's the nature, the laws of nature. How beautiful this same sentence will become in its meaning. I start with the name of the nature, the laws of the nature, which is the most merciful and beneficial. Yes, it is. You understand? You change the meaning or the interpretation of one word, and your whole world will change. Your whole world view will change. So this is something that I think that a re-education and a reinterpretation of these Islamic scriptures is needed. You know, the stories in Quran about idols and fighting with the idol worshippers and fighting with the Jews are the historical anecdotes at that time when it happened. It is a history. It is a history. It does not have an open-ended. History is never open-ended. History, it's historically, yeah. Muhammad fought with the idol worshippers at that time. They were his own kith and kin. They were not some people who came from abroad or invaders, or they were all there. They were all his uncles and his.
Thank you very much. It's a really revealing talk. I have two small questions. One, why is there this special, dislike of Jews? People in India or Indonesia or Malaysia would never have even seen them. Maybe they have heard some odd thing many years back. And why the special dislike of Jews? Okay, Hindus, okay, they're next door to each other. Maybe लड़ाई झगड़ा होता है, but Jews के लिए क्या है? And a soft corner for Christians, is it? Or Buddhists?
What you need to understand is that when Muhammad proclaimed prophethood, at that time, Jewish tribes were the economically, they were
Rich
these.
one.
Now, Muhammad wanted basically to be the prophet of the Jews. You will be surprised that 90% of the whole of Islam's penal code and its life code is 90% is Jewish.
Mhm.
There is no different. I mean, ये जितने penal code है, ये सजाएं, हाथ काटना, फलां और ये सब कुछ, और food, अल्लाह का नाम लो के food पे पढ़ो, when you sacrifice animals and all that. Whole of it is 100% from the Jewish. Basically, a fundamental Jew and a fundamental Muslim are 90% the same. So Muhammad tried over 12 years or 13, 14 years of his life, from age 40 onwards, to be Jews should admit him as a prophet, is their prophet, because he even claimed that he's from the same line. Okay, Muslims claim he's from the same line. So that now what happened is that Jews were as fundamentalist as the Muslims are today. So they were also adamant. Okay, so उन्होंने कहा उसको कि okay, because the Moses is the Jewish prophet, right? So उन्होंने कहा कि Moses spoke to God. He went to Mount Sinai, and God, in the form of a burning fire in the bush, spoke to him, and then he gave him miracles, and there were many miracles. One of the miracles is कि he used to put his क्या बोलते हैं उसको, walking stick, तो वो जो थे, that become a snake, and that eaten up all the other snakes, which the जो Pharaoh ने के जो थे, क्या बोलते हैं उनको, जादूगर, magicians, they had brought those. So they wanted कि okay, our prophet God has given him miracles. Now you bring your miracles. And Muhammad did not have any miracles. He could not bring out any miracle. So the Jewish people never believed him. So once he was totally fed up that okay, ab nahi hone wala, then he turned into, from trying to take their help, then he became their foe, because he had got political power by that time in Medina, and then he took all their they killed a whole tribe of Banu Qurayza, and more than 900 people were slaughtered, and he took all their stuff, and they were just so Jews at that time, Jews had created, they had an animosity with Muhammad, and it continued. Even history tells us that Muhammad died of poisoning, and he was poisoned by a Jewish woman. So it's all very famous story. A Jewish woman ने उनकी दावत की, feast पे उसने lamb पकाया, and she put a lot of poison into the lamb. And उस ज़माने में ये होता था कि well, when like that, the one, if there is any doubt about it, so क्या होगा कि one person among the party would eat the first morsel, and then once it's all okay, then the other will start eating. So when they started eating, the person who took the morsel first, he took it, and he immediately felt that it is poison, and he tried to spit off. He died, and he immediately gave a no signal. Muhammad had by the time had put it in something, he spit, but it could not spit the whole. So he became sick after that, and later on, about a year, he had all the suffering, and then he passed away. It's a very famously related कि उन्होंने उस औरत को पकड़ लिया, and she was obviously she was killed later on, but they said, why you did that? Why you poisoned me? She said, I wanted, it's a very famous quote. She said, I wanted to know, I have no remorse, because if you would have been a true prophet, God would have told you that this is poisoned. And if you are an imposter, you are not from the real God, then you will not know. So if you I knew that if you are a true God, God will tell you. God comes and tells you everything about everything all the time. But why didn't God would not tell you now that it is poisoned meat? So, and if I'm able to kill you, I'll be happy because I killed an imposter prophet. I did not kill a true prophet. So this is how there was an animosity. It was basically economic, that you drove them off their lands and their possessions and their trade, and you take over that. So now the understanding, the what the Arabian Muslims understand is that these were the Jews of that time. It has nothing to do with the current Jews or current us. It's a close. It's a story. It is a story from a scripture. It is gone, finished. But what happens is that that has been so much repeated all the time due to the inferiority complex of the Muslims, that 9 million Jews are 100 times stronger than all the Ummah. So this is a kind of a complex which they live every day with that. So that's it. And animosity with the Hindus is, as I said before, it is because of misunderstanding about idol worship and what is an idol. And it is not that we as a Hindu are worshipping an idol, taking him as a god, literally not as a god, but it is a manifestation of the powers of God. I mean, I tell people, look, Muslims, that look, God in Islam, God has got 99 names. Okay, and every Quran, when you open it, on the right and left flank, it is printed out the names of the God. They are called in Arabic Safati names, like the attributes of God. So in attributes, they are all the attributes of God. Like if I say in Arabic, Jabbar, Qahar, Mutakabbir, it means forceful. It means the one who impounds, the one who kills, the one who is arrogant. So these are all the powers of nature. If I say Allah is a nature, then these are all the powers of nature. Nature is merciful. Sometimes it is cool breeze. Sometimes it is hot. Sometimes it's raining. Sometimes it's a hurricane. The same clouds and nature becomes Mutakabbir and becomes Qahar as well, and becomes Jabbar as well, and becomes the killer as well, and becomes the life giver as well. So if I want to draw, if I say, okay, sculpt these names for me according to their meanings. So if I want to make somebody who is a protector and a killer, maybe I will make a statue of which is resembling Kali, for example. So, and if we want to talk about the alim, the one who is knowledgeable, I may draw Saraswati. So where is idol worship is not that we say that, okay, this is Allah. No, this is one of the, like you say, 99 different attributes of God. There are many more than. So I can very easily ask a sculptor to make a 99 idols, sculptures of what his mind understands from that word. And another artist can draw differently or make it different. Another can different. So it's not something that that every artist will draw the same. So this is what happens in Durga Puja time. How is it in Calcutta? Every what you call mandak bathik, whatever, that they have got a different kind of creativity.
I had this question when you said that the inference that we draw from stories is the actual essence that goes into our lives. I wanted to know whether it would help if the story is a myth or a story is a history, like itihasa or myth, because that debate has been very common these days. So would it change the narrative in any way, and understanding of people of those stories? That is one question, and I'll come back with my second question later.
Yeah, well, I would simply say that if I don't know, I mean, if you ask me, my personal belief and knowledge, I would say yes, Mahabharata did happen. There are archaeological evidences, but let's not talk about it. I say it. Why? It's not important when it happened, how long, far back in history happened. These are not relevant questions for today, because as a faith, as a religion, as a way of life, as a something we take spiritual guidance, what we need is that the lesson, what lesson it tells me. I have not seen the hare or the tortoise, but I know slow and steady wins the race. So similarly, if a revengeful attitude takes someone to its doom, I can see it happening every day in not only in individuals but in the nations as well. If I look at Pakistan, the revengeful attitude has brought them to the doom. Otherwise, what is lacking in Pakistan to be a vibrant and an independent and a prosperous country? Only the revenge and the hatred towards their own, ancestors, I would say. So unfortunately, 25 crore log, they are into a living in hell, virtual hell, because of that one lesson which they are not ready to take. So lessons are more important to me.
You said in Pakistan or Indian Muslims. So I'm not talking about Mahabharata or other scriptures, because those some of the evidences we already have. But if they knew their stories as itihasa and not myth, like what happened to with Aisha and Muhammad or other things that you mentioned, if that they knew more about it, then wouldn't that change their attitude and also about their genealogy? That has been they have been misled to believe that they came from somewhere else.
That is something I have a it's about those people who came to India as innovators and with the innovators, who are the one who created a total different kind of a stories and a different kind of interpretation. Even if the story was there, you could interpret it in a different way. It's a totally a different topic. But the thing is that yes, we can, if we understand that every religion, every faith, every book has a history of its own creation, the development, then we will understand it differently. But if we make it something fixed from Allah, which we even don't know what is in our mind about Allah, what is Allah, then this is what will happen. You have to basically not only unlearn the story, but you have to relearn those as well. I'm not asking Muslims to कि सब कुछ छीन लो, उनकी history उनसे छीन लो. No, but they can always look at it with a different frame of mind, as the other parts of Muslims are doing it. Say in Malaysia, say in Arabia now, say in what Turkey did 50, 60 years ago and during the life of Ataturk, and so many other places. I mean, you meet a Iranian, he would be celebrating Eid, but he will never forget to celebrate Nowruz, because that links that Iranian with the 5,000 years of history. If you meet an African Muslim, they would be Muslims, but they have definitely links with their whatever culture they had. They will not forget their dance and their music. And the problem with the Muslims is that Muslims of India is that when they think about, I mean, the problem is that in Hinduism, music, dance, colors is part of the dharma as well as the life of an ordinary Hindu. The food, the colors, the dance, the music, the festivals, all this is part of dharma. Now, what they think that if they adopt those things, then actually they are adopting their dharma. So they try to negate that, which is rightfully the tradition of the land, and they try to go somewhere else, which even don't acknowledge them with respect. Saudis have no respect for an Indian or a Pakistani Muslim at all. They just hate them. Everywhere.
Another question about Saudi Arabia, that you said that there are no graves there, which I know. I lived there for many years, so I know there are no graves there for Sunni Muslims. For the king and other known figures, there are no graves. But there are certain small areas of Shia Muslims where they have graveyards. So I would like to know a little bit about that, if you know.
Yeah, the graveyard, of course, the graveyards are there, but because when you don't allow it to be made a permanent structure, like a cemented one, then what happens is that after a generation, even if I go to my mom's grave every day and try to, keep a small stone there or whatever, after I pass away, who would care? My next generation. So it ultimately, when it is not a permanent structure, it ultimately, finishes in 20, 30 years, 2-3 decades. So it never remains the same. But when you build structures like Ajmer Sharif or other mazars, then it remains forever. And then a business starts building on it. I mean, you cannot really think of an Indian Islam without these mazars, which are actually had nothing to do with Islam, but they have become such a part and parcel of Islam and become a mafia and become a source of so much of, I would say, crimes against humanity, which happens there. And they were all the people, they were all who came from Iraq and Iran. None of them came from Arabia. Again, they're all, part of old time. There was not such a distinction between Iraq and Iraq borders as it is now. It was mostly to do with the languages. So it was all the people who came from, part of Iraq and Iran and Afghanistan. So this was all one region. So it's an irony that we are dealing with a brand of Islam which does not exist anywhere else in strictly in this way. And they are 30% of the total Islamic population.
Namaste, Khalid ji. Thank you so much for the talk. Something occurred to me as you were speaking, and then Nina ji asked a question related to it. So I thought I might just mention that. I do appreciate the role of stories in our lives in shaping our views and responses. And it is applicable in many contexts. It affects how we react to the world, how we understand ourselves. But I just wanted to add from my own humble experience is that we refer to something as a deeper awareness, Chetana, which helps truly teach us. And it goes beyond storylines. The catch I feel with storylines is it can fortify into narratives, stereotypes, identities, and superficial engagement with the stories in a theoretical, philosophical fashion, and does not penetrate deep into understanding the human experience. So if we can use the external stimulus to understand the human experience, that can cut through identities and other things, which is like, it comes back to itihasa or myth. Which one, do you use to cut through that? Other than that, I had a two-part question. You mentioned that specifically in Bharat, there is this particular interpretation of Islam, but there are different interpretations of Islam across the world in different regions.
Very true.
Why is there this particular misinterpretation in Bharat that is not prevalent in other areas? I couldn't understand that. If you can please enlighten me.
Because as I say, here, India was a huge land, and people came here from different ethnic backgrounds. As I was saying, they came from Iraq, Iran, speaking different languages. Iraqi part was speaking Arabic, Iranian was speaking Persian. Then some Turks came, then Mongols came who were speaking, lately the Persian. And they had their own kind of learning and knowledge. You can see that Babur, who is related to, by 3 generations, he was related to Genghis Khan, who actually brought down the whole of the Islamic empire. So later on, his grand and grandchildren became Muslims, the same faith which he destroyed. So because at that time, Islam was not the way it is now. As we say that it has been progressing, and it has been changing its shape and narrative and everything. And there was once a brand of Islam which was very, I would say, open to even an interpretation which is totally outside the ambit of fundamentalism. It was more open-minded, and that you have poets like Hafiz, and you have whose poetry, if you read something, thoughts as Advaita, and you read Rumi. It's entirely a different kind of mindset. So it has been changing. It has been changing. Now, when it came here, it developed into a different kind of factions and sections. And then why Islam in India is different is because you created here the 2 brands. One is called Brelvi Islam, and one is called Deobandi Islam. And the both are born and created, these schools of thought are totally Indic. Bareilly is a city in India, and so is Deoband. So both are totally a creation of the Indic civilization, Indic Muslim civilization, I would say. So they are quite opposite to each other. Brelvis are the one who are the mazar going, and who go to they do all this music and all that, dance and all that stuff, the Sufi kind of leanings. Whereas the same India then developed a Deobandi kind of Islam, which is more strict interpretation, and no music and no songs, and no dance, and no going to mazars and stuff. So totally only one-to-one with God kind of thing. So it's because of that we in the Indian subcontinent see a different kind of Islam, which has shades. The other countries do have shades of it, but not entirely. It's a totally different kind of a um, say different kind of a interpretation, because they did their interpretation according to their own convenience, I would say.
Yeah, I guess my question was when, let's say, for example, in Malaysia or Indonesia or Iran, they interpret Islam differently.
Yeah.
But why don't they have that same self-hatred towards their own culture? Like you said, they will follow Nowruz in Iran or in Malaysia. Why is that
Yeah.
different?
Because they are I mean, in none of these countries you have a population which is like the majority is there, which is totally different or antagonist to their own views. So if you see that in Malaysia, they there are Hindus over there. There is a Hinduism over there, but they are proud of their own history. Here, because you came as invaders and then you try to subjugate the local population, and you were successful in some way for some time, so that complex doesn't go. So that complex, that inferiority complex, has turned into a hatred, and it's all different, because in all these countries there is not a history of foreign invaders coming in with a different language and altogether different cultural values and different food and everything different. And Indian civilizational history is totally different. So that's why the Muslims in India, they have got a inferiority complex, which comes displays itself as a aggression and as a dominant form of say Islam.
So when Islam spread to the other countries, it didn't happen through invasion and subjugation. That's what you're identifying as the main difference between
they came and they stayed or they went on, but in India, if you see, all the invaders came here for looting. India was rich. India had got everything from masala trade to fruit to jute to everything. So no other country, no other current Muslim country has got a history of so much of loot and plunder which the India faced. So when you do the wars and kill, and then you plunder the land, and then you make them slaves, and you even bring the women back to your country, or you sell them in Baghdad and stuff. So it creates a different kind of hatred in your DNA, which is nowhere else. It never happened anywhere else.
Just one more question. You mentioned that recently only the interpretations of Islam happened from Arabic to local languages in Bharat. But Islam has been in the Bharatiya subcontinent area for a long time. So what were the Muslims following prior to those interpretations? Because even if they don't understand Arabic, they must be following a certain way of life. What was that, and how was it different from post 1700s?
Because not even post 1700s, but the maximum damage has occurred, if I say, is after 1970s, when the petrodollars started flowing, and the Saudi Arabia was that time being ruled by very those people. I mean, the animosity between the the Iranian, the Parsis, the Farsis, the Persians, and the Arabs. That became a kind of a playground in India, because India has got, Indian Muslims have got about, say, 20% of Indian Muslims are Shias. So they had allegiance with Iran, and then the rest of they had allegiance with Saudi Arabia, and both were the oil money and the petrodollars, and then they have created havoc until the late 80s in all this, until one was not eliminated. So this is one thing. The second thing is that in those times, the literacy was very, 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 very low. So and how an ordinary Muslim would be learning about the religions was what little bit of stories which he would hear from the mullah in the mosque. And the mullah in the mosque was also not a literate person, so he would had like 10, 12, 13 stories, and they were all taken out from Quran. All the stories in Quran are basically from the Bible, from the New Testament and from the Old Testament, and they are kind of an abridged version. So the stories in Bible, Old and New Testament, are very, very long. Be that any story, Moses, Abraham, or David, or Solomon, or whosoever. These are all the stories which are in abridged version. They are a little concise version in Quran. So they would just hear those stories and tell them. They were more kind of an ethical lessons. We would say, don't lie, don't cheat, do this, do good. They were not about killing and aggression, and this is what a normal commoner villager would hear those stories, and that continued. So the worst part happened when politics and money, and then that came in. And when my understanding is that when the Britishers came in, they have played a lot of role in creating a discord between the communities which were living there, whatever, but they were living there. In 1857, the mutiny, the Muslims and the Hindus, they jointly fought against it was not against the British. After that, when the British government took over from the East India Company, then those about 90 years saw a lot of change, because the British Empire was very powerful, and then they actually very ruthlessly implemented their strategies, and lot of even if there were seeds of discord somewhere in the society, where you water it, it is greener there. So they watered in a way, because that is how they wanted to rule, and this is a very well-known way of ruling. So it's again, I'm trying to be very concise. It's a huge long story what happened.
Thank you so much for patiently answering my questions. Many thanks.
Thank you.
Sir, just there are a number of sects in Islam. Somebody says 70, somebody says 80. Now, you just remember what happened to Ahmadiyyas in Pakistan. In Pakistan, they have been segregated, but I don't think they have been segregated anywhere else in this world. Now, is there any move to sort of bring all the sects together in Islam? Or how is it evolving? Are the number of sects increasing, or are they coming together? What do you think is the future of
You know,
Islam as it appears to be today?
the future of Islam, I mean, the sects in Islam is that, you know, I have a great faith in karma, the theory of karma as a prime mover of our fate and how we learn and we advance in our life. So more and more division is the logical, scientific, logical end result. Because if a theology is based upon creating divisions wherever it goes, so the seeds are of separation, seeds are of creating a animosity within the home, within the house. How, if you look at the history of Islam, kya hua? Well, the society was divided. The son was against the father, and brother was against the other brother. Then the cousins were on one side. You know, the same happened in the Mahabharata as well, because there, if the cousins and the families fought, it was because of a principle of righteousness. It was not a principle of subjugation because of having the land or the property or forcing your own viewpoint or blah, blah. And so Islam has got a different, you know, way of, say, progression. So wherever it goes, it will seed, it will sow the seeds of discord in that society, and it will divide the society. So it thrives on fight, it thrives on conflict, it thrives on creating animosity between the same community. This is how it works. Islam never thrives in peace. It never thrives in peace. It always has, because it is a militant ideology. So militancy needs all the time a warfare, a ladai, jhagda chahiye usko. That's why it can only thrive. So and as every Muslim thinks that, okay, the Muhammadan model life is the best way to emulate. So what he has to emulate, he will do the same. Simple. I see the immigrants community in Europe. Okay, so they are doing exactly with the society what Medina did to Meccans. Medina gave shelter to the people who migrated from Mecca. So Muhammad and his followers, 100 people, 100, 200 people, 150 people. What happened? They lived peacefully for a while. When they became powerful, they fought with the Meccans, and ultimately they subjugated the whole society and even killed the Jews and other Jewish tribes over there, and evicted them from their lands. Same thing. This is a model. This is the same thing is happening in Europe. The Muslims would come here, they will stay peaceful unless they become a bit powerful, and then they will start for fighting for their political rights and religious rights and blah blah blah, and continue. So your question was that, well, what will happen? More sects? Yeah, it will be, because this is the model. Because if I'm a Muslim, I am in one sect. Then if I become a bit more knowledgeable and powerful or vocal, then I will create another sect. Little bit. एक ने green topi पहनी हुई है, तो the other one will tilt the topi to this side and they will create another sect. So एक ने कहा हाथ यूं बांधने हैं, दूसरे ने नीचे शुरू कर. A little bit of differences, and they will just try to to create a bit of different, and then you have a new sect. So you were asking about the Ahmadiyya. Now the thing is, Ahmadiyya is again an Indian creation. So Ahmadiyya is an Indian product, as I was talking the other brands of Islam. So totally, it is from India. It started from Qadian in Punjab. So that's why they are called Qadiani. So the first person at that time, he was supported by the British, because he was a retired a station master of Indian Railways, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Qadiani. So when he retired, he was a Islamic scholar, or a learned person who was well versed with the Islamic theology, and he wanted to. What he said was, well, jihad is not for this particular set of circumstances. So when he kind of abrogated jihad, the British helped him, because they wanted to tone down the militancy at that time in the Muslims. So they helped him, and it was in a time of this immediately after the what you call this mutiny. So this is something which helped the political designs of British. So they supported him, and then he's a next. Then he then he became a what you call this. Okay, I am Masiha, Caliph, all that. So it's all nonsense, to be honest. I mean, the he never, the Ahmadiyya are never reformers. They are even a more close-minded sect, another more close-minded sect. Parda and burqa, and segregation between the male and female, and they have not given anything new or fresh to be a reformer. They cannot be called a reformer. I mean, they are subjugated, they are being killed, or blah blah. Yeah, it is sad. It is a violation of human rights. But the thing is, they are to blame themselves. What they have given, nothing new. So if you are believing on 100% everything the same which Muhammad did, then why to differentiate yourself from others? What is different? There is nothing different between them and the other Muslims. They are the same. So they are also a pathetic lot. Nothing. I mean, they have taken a lot of advantage in terms of political support from the West, and they have their center in London. Pathetic. Nothing new. Nothing. Absolutely nothing new. No reform. No reforms at all. Hinduism has seen reformers. Hinduism has seen people coming within the community and creating a different say a different picture, totally presenting Hinduism in a different way. Islam never had such a reformer, such a person who actually can change or give a new idea, or tell them, okay, you need to rethink, you need to reinterpret, you need to there are certain things which are really not relevant today. Arabs are doing it now, but the Indian Muslims have never done that. So they have not really created any leadership that which can really bring about any positive change in this society. I mean, their leaders are like Owaisi and all that. Nothing. It's just pathetic, totally.
what are the present stories that people like Owaisi and Zakir Naik and all are telling these people, like this Sir Tan Se Juda and all is a very current nara. So अभी क्या कहानियां बता रहे हैं ये लोग जिससे
No, there's nothing new, because this is the problem. You have to divide and rule, and so sect after sect after sect after sect. That's it. There's no new stories, because there cannot be any new stories unless you reinterpret. You give a dialogue. You have a dialogue in the society. Nothing like that is there at all.
I also had another question, but it has been covered largely in different parts as to what is common between different Abrahamic Abrahamic faiths and their stories. But you have covered it over the top.
No, it's all the same, because the
heaven and hell and concept of
they're the
prophet.
same. Bible, Bible is two parts: Old Testament and New Testament. When they are together, one is New. Old Testament is the book which Moses, which is ascribed to Moses, which is a Jewish. And then after Moses came Jesus Christ. After there's a in between like 2000 years, and then whatever Jesus, the New Testament says it is what the Jesus part of the story, which his Paul wrote, who was one of the disciples of Jesus Christ. So the two together are called by the Holy Bible, which is Old Testament, New Testament together. So you can see that Jews and Christians have got one consolidated book called the Bible, which is both, because it's the history. So the Old Testament covers up till Moses, and then New Testament covers after that. So it's all one. And Islam and Quran is a very abridged version of that same. Nothing largely different. Islam tried to take, he tried to placate both the Arabs, both the Jews as well as the Christians. So it said, okay, you can have interfaith marriages between Christians and Jews, because it calls them Ahle Kitab, the people of the book. So you can have food, relationship, marriages, living together, everything with the people of the book. So Jews and Christians are like they are brothers as per Quran. Whatever they have fight between each other, it is all political. There is not theological fight. Theologically, it is the same. If the Imam of Kaaba and the Ayatollah and the Pope sit together, they will 90% agree on everything, because it is the same. Their fight, wherever you see in the world, between these Abrahamic religions is just cousins fighting each other for gains, political gains, economic gains. There's no fight about theology, hardly any fight about theology, I would say. As much Muslims have sects and they fight in between each other, same is between these, broadly speaking, these Abrahamic religions. So their main fight is with the Hinduism, the paganism, or with the whom all of them are one. That okay, this is idol worshippers. I mean, who was the breaker of the idols? Abraham, who is the father of all the three religions. So we need to safeguard ourselves from the Abrahamic religions, which is all one when it comes to Hinduism. They will be fighting with each other, but when it comes to fighting idol worshippers, then they will all be together fighting you.
Something about this is there is a lyrics writer called Irshad Kamil in Bollywood these days, and he wrote a song, and he says it's all the same story. He says, अगणित साल से वही पुरानी तेरे मेरे इश्क की ये नई कहानी.
If you see closely, the problem is that the Hindus, which read the Hindu scriptures, they have not read the Abrahamic faith or the Abrahamic stories. Actually, when the people who have studied both, you will come to know that because Hinduism, the oldest faith and oldest stories and everything, everything is old. These I'd say there is no other faith in this world, be that these Abrahamic faiths or any of the smaller ones, who have not taken inspiration and copied from Hinduism. So the stories of this Pharaoh and this Mosa and all these are basically taken from Hindu scriptures. So it is not
The sea giving way, parting the sea, and the sea giving way to Ram and to Moses.
Everything has been taken from there. What they did is they just tweaked those stories and put under their names. So even again, it is a totally different topic for some time, but there is an uncanny resemblance which cannot come except being copied. And there is a historical evidence and record that they were copied from the Hindu scriptures. So that's why it looks so similar. It's not because that something happened there and something happened here as well. No, everything happened here. The rest of the world has taken it, has copied it. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. And hopefully we all learned something from each other.
Thank you so much. Namaste, everyone.